Thank you again for joining us. This is actually the last session of the podcast. We will soon be ending this, and to come, there may be future sessions, so we look forward to seeing you there. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Ashish Bisaria, who's the EVP and Global Head of Customer Experience at FirstSource. We'll be discussing a very meaty topic today. We'll be talking about the visionary optimist to the wary pragmatist. How do we think about customer experience, landscape, and what is happening today as well as in the future? So, Ashish, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Boris, and thank you so much for having me on this podcast.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure, Ashish. So, Ashish, you and I have talked quite a little bit on the topic of a customer experience. We've talked about all things sort of technology related as well. But for folks who are not familiar with you and what you've done in the industry, would you mind providing a little bit of background and how you got here today?
Sure, Boris. Born and brought up in India, and I've been lucky to be around a family where there was a ton of the career based around people experience. To elaborate, my dad's a doctor with a private practice. And medicine in India and private practice has a lot to do with relationships. Now, I don't know if I had the acceptance or the smartness to understand that as a teenager, but I did see what great experience does to somebody's brand or equity and the growth of a practice. I think it influenced me enough to do my MBA. And I think when I look about customer experience, there are three lenses that I've been fortunate enough to do over the 25 years. First 8 years, I started as a strategist, Big Four consulting firm. You look at from a theoretical perspective, an ideology perspective, and you guide your clients and navigate them through the customer experience journey. Good part about consultants is you're exposed to all industries. So you're not a individual company specific expert. You kind of get a broad view of industry. Those 8 years were excellent. And then all consultants at some stage are challenged and asked. It's easy to tell me how to do my job. It's different than to do it, right?
Right.
Timing was perfect. During these 8 years, I lived in 7 different countries on my way to US. And Sprint was acquiring Nextel. And you can only imagine 2 distinct business models. Sprint more attractive to consumers like you and I. Nextel more towards transportation, logistics, drivers on a push-to-talk platform. And bringing these 2 companies together was my foray into actually being on the operations side and learning what it takes to deliver on customer experience. And few other industries, worked for a .com, worked for an automotive company, but did it for about 13 years as an operator. And that left one more lens, which is a service provider or a customer experience provider, typically known as outsourcers. And over the last 4 years, I've been on the outsourcing side of it, doing it for my clients. So I feel blessed that this journey has given me the strategic, the hands-on operational, and now both aspects on behalf of my clients for them.
That's certainly, having those different lenses and combining sort of the ops piece to the strategy piece. I mean, it's just so vital because we kind of see that, sometimes there's really sort of great advice provided by the strategist, but will it actually be put into play? Will it be operationally executed correctly, and will it sort of scale to some degree? But I think I'll start off with my first question, which is kind of an important question. What does, customer experience is such a loaded word, right? I mean, everybody keeps talking about it. It means different things to different people. We can, maybe if you can get us to agree, like what does customer experience mean in 2020 today?
Yep. So Boris, I would start with the human behavior here. I think the last 10 years, we as humans have been trained or have got used to what I call instant gratification, right? Knowledge is instantly available. Products are instantly available. You want something, you click of a button, swipe of a screen, it's done. I think we as customers have come to expect that if I want something, snap of a finger, I should get it, right? I think that's how we are being trained. And in that, the underlying thing which has become more prominent is the amount of choices I have. Now, choices cut both ways. Sometimes I may be overwhelmed. I just went to buy ketchup, but there are 27,000 brands of ketchup to look at to decide which one I want, right? But I would say from a human behavior, the fact that instant gratification and that give me choices dictates it. I try looking at the trends that are happening or are slightly changing as we evolve in this thinking. So I'll start. And you started with 2020.
Yeah.
6 months back, had we generally asked the world around the concept of work at home, around the concept of human interaction and being around people, most people would have snickered, right? People talk about how they want to get away from the crowd, how they want their space and everything. 6 months into it, we are dying to get back to our friends and family and colleagues and be around people, right?
Yeah.
Our core attribute, Boris, at the end of the day, is still human connection. And, you know, customer service agents are typically taught, show empathy, be empathetic. But I think, and I use this word deliberately, empathy as a toolkit has become more prominent today than it ever was. And it's not only for the customer, it's even for us as employees, as colleagues, as customer service agents and employees. We want that human connection. And I would say empathy will take a resurgence in ways that we didn't expect the pandemic to do for it. So that's one of my trend and one of my bet. I think smarter companies, Boris, have learned that there is more to experience. So we talk about customer journey mapping. There's a lot of how do people move between the digital and the physical space, and let's look at all the touch points and let's map it and then improve it, right? I think the way to talk about this is customer journey orchestration. And that play of word is very important. We know what customers are doing. The data of how they move between physical and digital space has now been collected for the last 20 years. How do I orchestrate those moments? Creates better experience. And I tie to this the word, this is about micro experiences. And it's subtle, and I'll use an example that we don't typically think about. 20 years back, if you called somebody for a complaint or a topic or an issue, you had to categorically ask, knowing that nobody resolves it on the first time, you had to categorically ask, can you send me an email with the confirmation or with the update, right? Fast forward 20 years, you never ask that. You finish a reservation, an email pops up. You order a product, an email pops up. Your credit card got debited, a notification pops up, right? It's a micro experience, which has become part of the norm. And smart companies understand that we are used to certain micro experiences. And when you integrate those multiple micro experiences and orchestrate it, that's what I think is customer experience all about, right? 2 or 3 more other things I have noticed. I think data privacy is a concern. A lot of our information is now available easily. And I think smarter companies are starting to recognize that giving you and I the confidence that our data is protected, it will not be misused. I call it the transparency in their operation is important. How will you use my data? What will you do with it? What controls do I have or do I not have? The GDPR did not pop up, but because of this concern that we've had. I would say customer experience companies should think about what I call technology transparency and data transparency to their customer, right? I should know that. In that transparency, I would say there's a balancing act of technology and humanity. We cannot let technology be the sole provider and arbitrator and orchestrator of the experience. You've got to balance automation and humanity together. So those are the broad trends I see that I believe when stitched together allows my clients, good companies to create great experiences? Sorry for this long answer.
No. I mean, I think all the things there that you've kind of put forth make a ton of sense. Kind of also look at it from a lens maybe of my prior experience in financial services and looking at it across like people, processes, and technology, and how can all of those three components be brought along in order to do that. Because I think what ends up happening is the difficulty of actually executing on something like that, or even on any experience, is that we kind of like focus on one and don't invest enough in another, if that makes sense. And then we either leave behind the people who we hope to deliver, like our actual employees, or we're trying to jury rig old technology to do new tricks, as I call it, right? or we had a pathway or a process that we liked, and now we're just kind of paving the prior path and not really rethinking of, is this actually the right thing to do for the customer?
Spot on, Boris. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that actually a very interesting topic that you brought up, and really what really started this conversation, is sort of the introduction of technology. Specifically, let's just put it out there, the introduction of artificial intelligence and the utilization of it in contact centers. Now, I know some people will correct me as they're probably listening to this and tell me, Boris, AI is a huge topic. Yeah, of course, AI is a huge topic. We'll focus on it in the setting of a virtual agent in the contact center environment. And so, there's been a lot, Ashish, as you know, that's been made of this. Like, yeah, this is going to revolutionize the entire world. Will there be contact center employees after this is said and done? But where's myth and where's actual fact? Where do you see it today?
Yep. So Boris, it reminds me of the time, late 1990s. All you had to do as a company was add .com to your brand name. And suddenly you became a multi-billion-dollar valuation, right?
All right.
No change to your product, no change to your product features, functionality, just the word .com is that. I feel now everything is AI, right? You just have to talk about AI. Side story, and I'll answer your question. I'm an addict golfer, right? And all these brand companies that develop drivers and irons, how much can you innovate within 12 months? Like, yes, there's innovation probably over a 5, 8, 10-year window, but year over year, it's tough to keep innovating, given that the size of the driver head is regulated and what you can or cannot do with the club face is regulated by the PGA. So now, if you look at Golf Channel, the latest trend is a golf driver built with AI intelligence. And I'm laughing and I'm going, does it think for me that when I'm standing on a hole where I should not be hitting a driver, it stays in the bag and doesn't come out and says, Ashish, absolutely not. Are you going to hit the driver? It's a hybrid shot, right? And I joke about it a little bit, and I get it. I understand how they're using AI and how they're using all the data that they've accumulated over years. But the point is, let's just use the word AI to be cool, right?
Yeah.
So I use this example because I think we are in that window. Now, just like .com, which has become very relevant today, 20 years into it, right. AI will be very relevant in X years. I'm not a futurist, but yes, it will be relevant. But to your point, to your question, the practical use of it today, and the question that you raised, and I said, are robots coming and are they going to replace our jobs in the customer service space, right? Really, that's right. The underlying question. The amount of data needed to think like a human being is an incredible amount of background information. We learned A to Z, which are 26 alphabets, and we learned 0 to 9 as digits. When CAPTCHA came out to say, prove you're a human and not a robot, nobody taught us the squiggly 5 and the sideways 8 and a crazy X. Our brains are smart enough to look at CAPTCHA and figure out very quickly what I'm looking at, right? Minor errors here and there. A machine will not do that. You have to take all these shapes and squiggly lines and put 400 million such variants of 26 alphabets and 10 digits to make that system smart to fool a captcha. And I just think about it to say, do we realize the level of intelligence that has to be built in to make a job to happen? Now, can that be built? Yes. Has there been a robot built that is a better chess player than the smartest chess player? Yes. Is there somebody who's defeated a Go player? Absolutely. But the big IBM solution that played chess can't play Go. It wouldn't even know move one of it. But a human being, an amateur chess player, can also be an amateur Go player. And I use these examples to remind our humans and our humanity, we are far more than just one task or one discrete action. We are an accumulation of emotions, habits, tasks, capabilities, all stitched together to be us. And we'll always be relevant. Now, are there pieces of our effort that can be automated? Absolutely. If I'm doing copy paste between systems, that's not AI, but hey, I can build a bot that does copy paste on my behalf and I don't have to put in that effort. But once we get into the space of thinking, analyzing, understanding context, yes, there are promises, but the promises aren't close to letting humans do, right?
Yeah.
So I argue these are great R&D projects because they have multi-million-dollar investment capabilities to train something. But a business is trying to trade a multi-million-dollar investment into an idea of artificial intelligence against the 50 outsourced agents somewhere in India or Philippines, right? And the cost economics just don't match. So I would say, and I said I'm not a futurist, but I'll say the next 5 years, AI has a long way to come to be competitive enough in point solution. Again, I'm going to stay on it, on point solution to be smart enough. But it will show progress. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the neat things that you said is really sort of like that focus on empathy. That was like the comment that I took away from the conversation, which is how empathetic can a virtual agent be? And that's not to say that they're supposed to be empathetic, but that's certainly not in the DNA of what they deliver, what they can be programmed to do. So I certainly agree with you, Ashish, that there's definitely things and tasks and mundane. We usually kind of sidestep them and call them high frequency, low value interactions that can certainly be automated, and folks should really focus on. There's lots of business cases that could be made there, and as we say, lots of wood to chop. However, that personal connection, showing empathy, really sort of taking in and absorbing what the problem may be is, at least in my mind, is for the least part, left probably better to the agent. But having said that,
But Boris, before you go forward, I want to add a little bit more editorial.
Yeah.
As First Source, we talk about our approach is digital first, digital now, right? To your point, clients are asking for this, that, hey, can I have a bot do everything? Why do I need agents, right? So we do talk about digital first, digital now. But when we talk about innovation in our company, and we've been very deliberate, one thing I love about my company is that as a leadership organization, as a culture of 22,000 people, we believe in the power of humans tremendously. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about innovation, this is something we talk as a team, and it's a deliberate statement within us, that innovate for humanity, not for speed, right?
Right.
It's a very different lens. Yes, do we want to make a process faster and a handle time lower and get the customer the information they want immediately? Yes, but that is a given. Everybody's thinking about that. Everybody's trying to solve for speed. We want to solve for humanity. And I am so excited about our organization to always have that lens on.
I think that's a pretty interesting statement that you make. And I'm only reflecting because I don't think, like, if I take and I dissect that statement a little bit more from the standpoint of First Source in your organization, you're working to help your employees have better conversations with other consumers or human beings. You're saying, hey, I work for my employees. I think that's quite a bit different. And I'm going to actually point a little bit to the technology space and say, I think I think the technology space traditionally has been go fast and break things, right? And I'm not, and I think we should take more of an ownership, kind of pointing back to us, really regarding having like understanding who we're working for and whose lives we're making better on a daily basis. I think that's your point.
Boris, thank you for saying that. You couldn't have said it better, right? And you said that. Uh, how are the ROIs defined on these AI solutions and platform solutions, right? I'll make your processing speed faster of interaction. I can do more simultaneous chats with the same person. I can answer this question using a virtual bot and you don't need a human being, right? All those are, and again, I use the word speed, right? This is about efficiency play and speed play. But just that angle, right? People will still talk to people. If I can detect emotion right now, right? Assuming you are the consumer and I'm the agent, and I can detect your emotion, and I can hint to Ashish, hey, you sense a level of frustration or anger or disappointment in the voice of Boris. And if that can be whispered on my screen or in my ear, and I pivot my conversation in real time to manage that emotion, that's a beautiful use of technology, right? It's not about speed, but it's about that innovate for humanity, right? When I have to answer a technical question, right? Imagine being a technical agent in like a Samsung group, right? You have n number of products from refrigerator to smartphones and everything in between. And each product can have n number of problems. The dimensions of problems is just so huge, right?
That's right.
If I can intelligently understand what Boris is saying and help the agent get to the right answer, either through a series of the right questions asked back to you or the right searches done in the knowledge base to distill information that allows for a better conversation. And again, I'm not saying the efficiency and the speed piece is waste of effort. Absolutely do that. We do it. Everybody should do it.
Right.
But you need to layer in the humanity part of it. And when you use technology for that, I think that's magic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And on that particular topic, and maybe a little bit from your book today, maybe your book from before, and I don't mean that in the literal sense like a book, but these investments in innovation and in looking at things differently, whether it's with AI or with other processes, knowing that some of them may be successes and some of them may be failures. How today within your organization do you act like a catalyst to promote innovation, even though at the end of the day, it may not be a success?
Yep. Spot on. And I think 25 years of doing customer experience, Boris, has taught me one thing. You can't always see customer experience in the balance sheet, right? So the effort during annual budget seasons that I've had to go through to get any dollar investment from the organization has always been a challenge, right? How do you justify a 5-point increase in NPS will have a bottom line impact of X dollars, right? So the art science part of it, the quick experimentation part of it, the A versus B testing, control versus test group, phased file, nimble development, agile thinking, right? All these ideologies have been shared by different people over the last 10, 15 years as they've tried not wasting too much time, money, and resource to prove a point. And I think personally, we use some of the same ideologies, right? Try it out quickly, see if it works. But I want to answer the question from a character of an organization before I get to the brass tag of it. Not every organizations handle failures easily, right? Some may have very low threshold of failures. Some may have very high threshold, but everybody has a threshold. Understanding where the organization thresholds are allows people like me who like to innovate and experiment to figure out how far we can push. So regardless of where that threshold is, my formula, and if my boss listens to this podcast, he'll recognize why I'm saying this, is you make some sure shot bets and you do a few experiments and few projects and few POCs and few demos and a few implementation. that have been done for the last 5, 6 years by so many other companies that the risk is so minimal that you have to be really, really bad to fail on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those small bets gives you the credibility and the runway to try a little bit more riskier thing, right? Now, I'll be the first to say, in my organization, I'm allowed to simultaneously do a very risky, and the safe bets simultaneously. And I'm blessed. I find myself, pinching myself often to say, really, you're going to trust me and you're going to give me this chance to do this? And the entire leadership is, yep, because they know that somewhere within our structure, we will not keep making bets about big failures again and again and again, right? If we make a big bad bet, we learn, we'll pivot and move on. So I think my answer is it's unique to your culture of your organization, but you build credibility and get some runway by playing sure shot bets and then playing the riskier bets. The second way we've managed this is to work with the right partners, right? We are not the R&D shop. We are not the creator of the solution. We don't know the intricacies of the product. And we all are guilty of it. Doesn't matter if the product is 20, 30 years old. Do we use the product's entire capability? Absolutely not. How many of us are power user of a Word, Excel, or a PowerPoint? Yeah. Most of us use 20% of the capabilities of these tools, right?
That's right.
Maybe 60% of a Word, but surely 5% of an Excel, right? Mm-hmm. Having the partners and believing in them, partnering with them, and bringing them into the solution creation is also a key part. And Boris, your organization has been a key success story for us as FirstSource also, where we've said, we want a business outcome. We don't know everything about how your product can do that, so work with us to do it. Having that humility to partner is a second big recipe for success. And third, I always say, ask the disparate question. Connect the dots slightly tangentially. When you hear a product feature and functionality, don't limit your thinking to say, what can I do within these parameters? Think slightly differently with other experience. I talked about micro experiences, as I said.
Right.
What other micro experiences that delights me, can I pull them into this? And then think about it that way. Because when you combine those three entities, I think your probability of success improves radically.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. Sort of as you laid out the bets that you have and making sure that you always have room for innovation and making small but maybe risky bets that may or may not pan out, but that may have a bright future and maybe a differentiator for you in the future. This has certainly been a great conversation, Ashish. Thank you, by the way, for coming and joining us today to talk with us about this. And so I'll kind of leave the last word to you, Ashish, for clients that are maybe hesitating or maybe thinking today, how do I sort of convince my executive leadership maybe to take an innovation approach instead of continuing to do things that we've done, or maybe top three, or maybe top three things that you would recommend. You tell them, go and do this today.
Yep. I would start probably repeating a little bit is partner with the right product company, right? Free editorial, but LiveVox has been very good partner to us in our success. Absolutely, unabashedly, I can say that, right? Partnering with the right person. You don't need to do it. You need to go get the person who's done it 20 times, right? So if you want to start something new that you've never done, go find somebody who's done it 20 times. Second, this is philosophy. It's called the tipping point. You're not going to convince all the executives and all the employees who are going to be impacted. You need to convince just the right amount of people and the right people. And there are two types of people you need to convince. The enthusiastic, the glass is half full, the future building person, because you need that energy and that persona on your team. But you need to find the biggest critic who will believe that this is going to fail and it's the worst investment and idea. Bring that person into the room and listen to that person. Understand all the red alerts according to that individual. that doesn't mean you stop. That means you solve for those red flags in your solution creation to increase your probability. Third, it has to align with your executive leadership culture and environment. I'm never going to recommend somebody to be the martyr on the flagpole of going and say, I want to innovate, and the entire organization is about incremental changes, right? So you need to learn about your organization. Those are the things I would look for. Everything else I said earlier, if you combine those micro experiences and the right partnerships and everything, you can build it for a higher success rate. Finally, I'll say that there's not a single company, the wealthiest of wealthiest company to the smallest company, that hasn't failed multiple times while innovating on an idea. And there are public failures, and then there are private failures, and everything in between.
Right.
It's going to happen. Get on with it, accept it. Nobody's going to have a batting average of 1,000. Nobody.
Thank you. No, I think that's great advice for our listeners. Thank you, Ashish, again. Thank you for everybody who joined us today. Take care. Stay healthy out there.